The models haven't been improving as much since Opus 4.5. So how do you get more value? It's the harness. If you follow the X hype, it's like I should be anywhere from 10x to 100x on my code velocity, and bigger organizations aren't realizing it. Their products are like combinatorial explosions of features, and they have super high stakes if something goes wrong.
We have a guest from ito.ai.
Hey, thanks for having me. My name's Evan Marshall. I'm the CTO of ito.ai, and we build the verification layer for AI-generated code. The problem's really simple. The bottleneck of code development has moved to QA, and we don't really have great tools to automate and scale QA, so that's why we built Ito. Ito is a code review tool that actually runs your code. So in your code reviews, you get end-to-end testing and integration testing, you get screenshots, videos, and run logs associated with your PR.
I definitely feel the burn, especially recently as models got better, that you might get a fix out in 1 minute, but to verify the fix takes exponential more time. So you actually have way more PRs just sitting, rotting to die. How do you guys solve this problem? Are users still required to write these end-to-end tests, or you're doing some magic for people?
It's not magic so much as it is a workflow of swarms that is creating observability and accountability for agents. Right now, I would say that code review tools like Reptile and CodeRabbit are sort of the unit test layer of AI code review. And what Ito aims to solve is the integration and end-to-end test layer. So you get observability, you get to see what the changes actually look like without having to click around in a preview environment or pull the changes locally. You get logs and proof that things are actually working the way you expect them to. So we're noticing that teams move faster, and the sort of clicking around and struggling maintaining your preview environments or pulling things locally just to see what an agent did, that is sort of a temporary problem that we're working on making disappear.
So yeah, how'd you come up with the company and the idea? Where was the genesis?
Back when I was in college, I was really into scraping. I love scraping social media and doing data analysis, and I hated clicking around. And when I started using Claude code, I was just clicking around way too much. So I was like, why can't the machines click around for me? And you follow that path enough steps, and it started with QAing readmes. I was like, what if I just tested if someone's readme worked? And then it kind of evolved into, wow, I can actually have AI check my changes. If I'm trying to test out new tools, I can have it set up new tools for me. And then we try to take those pieces and make them a product.
Dang.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things is a lot of teams that we work with are always talking about what's a harness. And I know, is Ito a harness? Is Mastra a harness? There's a lot of questions around just harness engineering. How did you think about that when you're building Ito? Would you consider Ito a harness itself? And I know it's just kind of a buzzword that everyone's using, but there's a lot of interest, and a lot of people are asking, how should they be thinking about harnesses these days?
I feel like the models haven't been improving as much since Opus 4.5. That was where I think you saw so many things change. And then since then, it's felt more incremental. So how do you get more value? It's the harness, right? If your model is essentially fixed in capability, you need a harness. Internally, we joke around that we have a carriage, right? It's a bunch of harnessed horses, all trying to work together. And really, it's experimental. It's actually so much fun to program these types of things. But the way I think about harness engineering is it's very experimental. You need to spend a lot of time and effort sort of managing your own internal eval sets, because at some point, external benchmarks are not reflective of the behavior of your system.
I like the concept or the visual I get when I think of a carriage. It's not just a harness. This is a full carriage. There's been two sides to this coin that I've seen people, and at Mastra, I know what side we're on. It sounds like we're probably maybe on the same side, which is, you actually want to add a bit more to your harness, because adding more features around how you engineer the harness can actually help you get results, especially if, and I do believe this too, it seems like model growth is still there, but it's slowing down a little bit. And I think there's others that are saying you need a very thin harness and then just let the model do the work. And so I think there's two sides to that.
Yeah, I think more about sort of boundaries and capabilities. So something that's been really important for designing Ito is to have like deterministic boundaries and verification, and sort of like if you tell the agent what to do, right, it's going to do worse as the models get better because the model will think of like more creative and better approaches that you may not have thought. And so your harness is always decaying. But if you create a deterministic boundary and goal for an agent and say like, your goal is to get to this deterministic check that I can verify and then not have like compounding probabilistic errors accumulate in my system. That allows you to sort of benefit from agents improving and to say like, okay, today are my goals too complex for a single agent, or do I have to break them into sub goals? In general, I find that like having agents with really powerful environments is how you sort of get the most value out of them. So like the environments that we run our agents in are fully featured VMs. They're big sandboxes with high walls, right, to prevent them from escaping. I find that like the best thing you could do to like make an agent worse, if you were trying to make your agents worse, you would give them more goals, right? You would say, do this thing and this thing, and then it doesn't know how to like prioritize between those two different goals. So I think if you're designing your agent systems, you should sort of break tasks, not by like capabilities in terms of like do step A, step B, and step C, but in terms of what are the natural goals, right? And that's what we're already seeing in code development. That's why like we have, code review bots and code gen bots, because fundamentally they're different goals.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. Like, it really comes down to like task decomposition, but not in a way that is like, the step A through B. It's more like you're taking like a big idea and breaking it down into things that can be swarmed or pulled in a carriage, I guess. What do you think is let's say Claude Code is the typical harness. And let's say, let's use Opus as an example of the typical model. What is the delta? Like, what's the gap there for people to build better harnesses? Like, what's the feature set look like from just the model to, doing things that are more efficient?
I think like there's a lot of infra and this task decomposition that you're saying. So like for us, something that like people ask about in terms of like QA is like, oh, can't I just use Claude with Playwright? And then it's like, well, do you want to watch that on your local machine, or do you need an environment? Okay, you need an environment. How are you going to maintain it? So it's all these tasks that if you had the perfect prompt every single time, maybe, but there's a lot of like guardrails and designing these workflows so that you can basically turn what is many prompts and a lot of waiting for a user into a single async flow. So I think that like in terms of building these harnesses, the thinner your harness, probably the more general the task, right? But if you can decompose and like understand your task and your workflow really well, then you can get a lot of benefit by designing a better harness. And I think in our case, building infra for that harness.
And I think that's been very much proven out for those of you who maybe haven't looked. If you go and look at, I think it's Terminal Bench, and you see that Opus scores very high in Terminal Bench, but the harness actually makes a significant difference in scoring. And actually, Claude Code's not the highest scoring harness that uses Opus on Terminal Bench. So the harness engineering clearly does matter, and maybe those are very specific to do well at that benchmark. But as you said, I think there is a combination of you need infra, because actually running Terminal Bench is very hard. You need the right infra to even run it. But it's tied to infra, it's tied to the harness engineering. There's a lot to it that I think maybe some people don't fully understand if they haven't spent a lot of time in it. I think you had a demo and you wanted to show a little bit more around like how Ito actually works.
I just kicked off a few runs on Ito against a few different repos. So this is kind of what I expect code reviews to look like in the future. And this is like our version of it. You can also see like this sort of like integration as a PR comment that you would expect from like other code review. But this is sort of what I imagine that like observability at the PR level looks like in the future. So you get like an actual video of this is Ito running post-hog entirely by itself. There was no human intervention. There was no human configuration. Of course, in some cases, human configuration can allow the model to be, steered better. But this is like a PR about fixing a bug, and you get actual sort of like logs and videos case by case. So you get like reproduction steps, you get anything that was stubbed or mocked to do the tests. I'll go through a couple examples. We find a lot of issues that are more sort of on the integration and end-to-end type, right? So a lot of security issues, a lot of like weird states that most humans wouldn't even find, like rapid remounting, like can create problems and have like stale side effects. Um, and I think that like if you're running like really full agentic loops, this is where you're actually going to use tools like Ito to be really close to the product, right? If someone implements a feature like and you get 1,000 line diff, like what are you actually going to do to like make sure that things work as you expect? I also ran it on Excalidraw. That's like probably my favorite open source whiteboarding tool. It's pretty straightforward and pretty obvious when you think about where code review is going. It's going to something like Ito, where you get videos, you get screenshots, you get code analysis, all directly like this next layer of observability.
And the test cases here are from the code bases themselves that you're running, their test cases, or are these new test cases?
So test cases are generated by the PR. So one of the limitations right now of like, how do you do QA? It's a combination of two things. It's manual, right? Humans clicking buttons, and then end-to-end test suites. Now, end-to-end test suites are very limited because you have to run them in CI all the time, and they're very fragile. You have to maintain them, and there are tools to make that easier, but it's still not a great experience. So what Ito says is like, hey, let me scale my manual testing that right now is probably just some basic checks around very core flows, and let me put all that on the PR. So these tests don't propagate to CI, and they're generated based on the actual code diff. And whatever integrations, the company has added. So we go a lot deeper. If you added up like all of the test cases you'd have across all of your PRs, right? If we're adding 30 to 50 test cases per PR, right? Very quickly, could you be in the many of thousands, and it'd be super unreasonable to run it in CI.
Is that because you guys go into like a test plan mode where you're trying to figure out based on the PR, these are the test cases, you run them. What if the test cases aren't correct? Like, how are you evaluating that?
Test case alignment is huge. Requesting user feedback and sort of like we dog food our own product, right? We use Ito to build Ito is sort of like the first line of defense, but really customer feedback is like the biggest thing, and making sure that we're aligned there. There are sort of like other metrics in our eval set of like how successfully can we complete a test case. Our system doesn't always like successfully complete every single test case it can imagine. That's easier to measure. Test case alignment is a really sort of like more nebulous concept that really depends on user interaction.
And do they align when the PR is open? Like they see what's been generated and then they can comment and adjust the test plan, or is that it just runs for that PR and they gives feedback for the next time?
Yeah, you just like tell it like, hey, I didn't care about this test case, or like test this, right? In terms
and it'll re-roll.
Yeah, and it runs on every commit too.
Dang, that's tight.
Yeah, appreciate it. It's a lot of fun to build. I've been a professional programmer for like 15 years, if I count internships in college. And it's like so much fun to build with these systems and see like the surprising things that they're capable of.
How big's your team?
We're 14 people right now, mostly engineers.
So who do you see as the common person that says like, okay, I should try Ito? Who are the target? Who are the people that are like beating down your door to say like, yes, I want to try this, and they're having good success with it?
It's more enterprise, right? So the big challenge is like, if you follow the X hype, it's like I should be anywhere from 10x to 100x on my code velocity, and bigger organizations like aren't realizing it. They're probably like 50% faster, maybe twice the speed, but they're nowhere near the hype. And the problem is that their products are like combinatorial explosions of features, and they have super high stakes if something goes wrong. So their validation layer like doesn't exist yet. Like there's a mandate from the C-suite that it's like, hey, we're going to have like token leaderboards and everyone has to adopt these tools, but the engineers like don't feel comfortable right? Because they've just seen too many things sneak through. If you look at like the GitHub status page, it looks like a Christmas tree.
Yeah.
Right. There's like,
and Anthropic.
Yeah.
Yeah, both.
right. That's what they're worried about is like, if you're like a healthcare company or fintech company and like you have real customers and it's going to cost you so much money, you would just accept a lower code velocity, right? But there's the mandate to go faster because your competitors are going faster.
Looks like we have a good question in the chat.
Sebastian says, let's say I have a massive end-to-end test collection built with Playwright that we actually run with heavy caching. Could Ito run them selectively or use them as a basis for how to test behavior in the app?
Yeah, so part of like Ito's like onboarding for a repository is discovering like what already exists. It's actually going to like want to test real flows. So if there's like a database service that's kind of like mocked by an in-memory object, Ito's actually going to spin up that database. We use dev containers under the hood, which is kind of like Docker compose / Docker files with a little like lifecycle attached to them. So it will be informed by the end-to-end test collection, but unless you're doing an issue that is editing that code, it will not use them directly. So one thing that's also kind of cool about Ito is the videos are horrible for these types of test cases, but it can run developer tooling, right? Like if you update an ESLint config, it'll actually like run the commands in its bash and double check that like there aren't new type errors or something isn't misconfigured. It can do back-end test cases, but if you edit the end-to-end test cases, it will actually like run them, but otherwise for other like normal test cases, it'll just be informed by them.
Awesome. Well, Evan, really appreciate you coming on. What's the best way for people to either get in touch with you or try out Ito?
It's super easy to sign up for Ito. You just go to ito.ai and sign up, connect a repo, and you're off and running. You don't have to add a credit card or anything like that to try it out.
There is definitely something to this idea of we can ship more software. How do we ship more software safely? And so it's always cool to talk to folks who are deep into trying to help solve that problem of how do we ship faster, but still making sure that we have the quality and we don't end up looking like a Christmas tree on our status report graphs.
Thanks for having me.
See ya.
Dude, did you subscribe?
Dude, I host the show. Did you subscribe?
Did you subscribe?
Subscribe to Agents Hour every Monday, noon Pacific.